I'm Keith Wooden, and welcome to Story Mosaics. You know what? I want to talk to you a little bit as we're opening the program today about a shift that we're making, and not a shift that we were planning on or inaugurating. It just kind of happened organically, but it's exactly what I wanted to see. I'm here with Delaine, my wife, and we're going to be picking up a little bit on a story we started last week about the Amish and my time with the Amish and our time with the Amish, because Delaine was an integral part of that. But before we get there, let me tell you a little bit about this shift. You know, in podcasts, numbers are everything. And so we're constantly analyzing the numbers and where the numbers are going and who's watching what and what do they not like. And we're trying to make some assessments and tailor programming accordingly. And pretty soon you find yourselves focused on numbers. And that's a really bad place to be, especially when you're talking about something like story mosaics. Because the heart of Story Mosaics, if you remember, is simply this: that everybody, everyone has a story, and we want to help you tell yours better. And so, that means it's focused on you and your stories, not about our numbers or something like that. Well, as I was looking at those numbers the other day, something dawned on me. Many years ago, there was a phrase that stuck home to me, that every number has a name, every name has a story, and every story matters to God. It's not original with me, but it really grabbed a hold of my heart, because I believe that the stories that are represented on Story Mosaics really have as their backbone, as their essence, your story,
Mm.
and how that story relates to how God is telling your story. And really, what happened was it started to take place because what was just a lot of people listening to a podcast now has become a community, not just listening, but interacting. And I'll take you back to when Desi talked about homelessness. And she kind of grabbed our hearts when she spoke of homelessness. And so Hannah out of Northern Indiana wrote Desi a note and said, "This program really touched me deeply. And I'm so thankful for her vulnerability." I'd read to you exactly what she said, but you're getting the message. And then Desi talked about how, on a personal level, she said to me, you don't know how much that impacts me when I get some feedback on what it means when my story impacts other people." And then Linda, who told us that story about how she refused to listen to God, and we all laughed with her because the title of her message was, I mean, the title of her podcast was so funny. How I learned to listen to God by ignoring Him, and yeah, we all laughed at that at the same time. Then she started getting feedback, and people started saying, "You know what? I have ignored God long enough." And what was people just listening now became a community of people interacting. And they started interacting from Ecuador, who, as two people there who I deeply love, with Daryl and Kelly, listen in. And I know their stories. And I can't wait. I'm just feeding this into you, Daryl and Kelly. I cannot wait until I get you to tell your stories, because they're so intimate to their lives. And then we talked about the Philippines a while back as Delaine shared that story. And people from the Philippines started joining us because they saw that word, they clicked in, but then they stopped just being watchers and became a part of the community. And so we have people literally all over the world that are now not just observers, but they are participants in Story Mosaics. And that means we want to hear your stories. And not just Desi's and not just Linda's, but can I tell you something else? Because it's been it's been over and over, and I'm just scrolling back through a few of the episodes as we heard Brianna's story, and our hearts broke with that family, and we recognized their loss and how that changed to hope. And then one of our most popular podcasts in terms of the numbers was just a story of a man who was touched by God's hand in healing. Ah, you know what? We've seen it over and over and over again. This is a community of people telling stories and just living their lives in community with one another. So I want to thank you for being a part now of not just Story Mosaics, but the Story Mosaics community. Hey, I told you I was going to introduce Delaine here in just a moment. And so, yeah, we're going to flash Delaine's picture up here. So be ready, Delaine. You're on the air. Yeah, Eric always talks about don't look like you're a hostage. That was a little bit looked like you might have been a hostage that I was holding in here. Okay.
Now I'm smiling.
Now you're smiling. But Delaine went with me to northern Indiana for our time with the Amish, and we told you that we wanted you to participate in this, and so you ask us a few questions, and there have been more that have come up over there. So I'm going to ask Delaine to read some of them. We're going to respond to
Sure.
some of your questions. If you didn't do it this time, remember that you can always write us at story.mosaics1. That is the numeric one, story.mosaics1@gmail.com. And we'll get your email and we'll respond to that personally, first of all, but also it gives us an opportunity to get your feedback or your questions so we can tailor the programming to your needs as well and your interests. But okay, so here were some of your crazy questions. Okay, so because what was your first response when you read some of these?
Well, I didn't really even think about it, but this question from Jay, Keith, you spoke of the Amish like we would all know who they were and who you were talking about. Maybe I live under a rock, but I really don't know much about them. Who are the Amish?
Oh, that was a great question though, because
Was.
we in Indiana, and
Mm-hmm.
especially in northern Indiana, we all are very familiar with our Amish community.
Well, it's because it's so concentrated in this area and in Ohio and all the way over to Pennsylvania. So,
And in fact, of the approximately 500,000 Amish,
mm-hmm.
2/3 of them live in that small region.
Yeah,
And so, yeah, we're very familiar with them. And
yeah.
so, yes, you're absolutely right. We just make an assumption, but the Amish are. You want to go with that a little bit because you were talking about that on the way over in the car.
Well, it's a community of people that reminds me a little bit of the Puritans back in England that decided to break off from the Church of England and find a new way or a place to live that they would be safe to worship the way they wanted to. And so the Amish are Anabaptist that broke away from I guess, the
Lutheran,
German
yeah,
Lutheran Church.
Lutheran church, yeah.
Yeah, and they came over to this area and have settled here, and they've been able to maintain their lifestyle.
You know what? They put a pause button in basically the late 1800s, early 1900s about
Mm-hmm.
saying we're not going to just be swept along by the technologies. We're gonna
Right.
we're gonna be a unique people with our faith unique. Now,
Mm-hmm.
can I just kind of tag on that because they came up with a book of
Mm-hmm.
ordinances. Really, what's it called there?
Ortung,
Or dung, yeah, or yeah, something along that.
Ortung, I think.
Or is it DUNG?
I think it's
You know what?
Tung. I don't see
We'll
it.
check the spelling on there real quick.
Yeah.
Um, but that book was the book of everything that an Amish person has to do
Mm-hmm.
physically, how you dress, how you conduct yourself, how you speak,
Mm-hmm.
everything you need to do to be distinctively Amish.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this has been one of the big deals is for some it becomes a really controversial area because does it then supersede the scriptures, does it come alongside the scriptures, is it just part of their distinctiveness? And so this is what has caused um, some to have reactionary
Mm-hmm.
attitudes and things like that. And so,
Mm-hmm.
and you know what, just like any group, there are people who have such strong affinities for the Amish, and you and I would probably be a
Be in
family
that
that,
group,
yeah, we
yeah.
would be because of our experience with,
Mm.
um,
Well, I was attracted to him before we even had the opportunity to go stay with them. Their lifestyle just always intrigued me, and I've read lots of novels, lots of books
Okay, well, that's actually
about
one of the
that, and that
questions.
was
Go
one of
ahead
the
with one of the other
questions.
questions
Yeah,
there.
I've read some of the books by Beverly Lewis, Cindy Woodsmall, and Wanda Brestetter, and they have sold over 24 million books. How accurate are they of the Amish culture and lifestyle? Well, I'd say it's pretty accurate. Although I would say that the shunnings are a little over exaggerated. We didn't see much of that at all
And I
while
think,
we were there.
yeah, and I think like any book, it exaggerates in
Hmm.
order to tell a story, and to
Hmm.
create a storyline there. And
Right.
so, yeah, they're exaggerated in many senses. And but I will tell you this: many of the Amish read some of those books.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah, they do.
it was fun when we walked into the house and there's some of those books in the rack there. And since there's no TV, there's a lot of reading time. Well, I shouldn't say a lot of reading time because you work until 9 o'clock and then you
Yeah.
fall into bed tired. So,
Yeah,
what's
but they
another question you
yeah.
have?
Yeah, but the kids have to do homework at some point
That's
too.
right.
So, this question was from Linda. Was the TV series Breaking Amish about Rumspringa accurate and truthful?
No.
No.
Uh,
Case closed.
Case closed. That was just such an unfortunate thing, and Rumspringa is real. It's a 2 year period of time where a person can
Hmm.
sow their wild oats. That's real, but
In
um,
fact, we were there during one of their kids was in his Rumspringer.
introduce us to the folks we're talking about again.
Okay, I'm speaking of the couple Melvin and Rachel, and they had 8 children, and 6 of them still live there at home, and I think I can remember all of their
No, we're
names.
not doing the names. You could, I know, but it'll just go over all of the rest of
But
our heads.
anyway, they
There was one that was a teacher. That was an interesting
yeah,
thing as well.
the
Th-
oldest Eva was a teacher
And
because she had gone through 8th grade and she had the liking or the inkling to be a teacher someday. So I don't think they even had to take any class. Well, yes, they did. They had to take some classes, and then she stepped into the teaching role, and so she taught her
siblings,
siblings, her
yeah.
younger siblings.
And at a very small gap between her and their ages at the beginning.
Yeah.
Now she was older when we went there, and she lived at the school, which was very
Yes.
very interesting
Yes.
as well.
They provided housing for them up above the school, so in case of the weather, and remember, Amish do not have motorized vehicles, so in order I remember at one point we had our car there when we were staying there. We had our car there, and they needed to go get some of their meat that they had processed and put into a meat locker off location, off of
Yes.
their home place. And instead of hooking up the horse and buggy and drive or riding the horse and buggy all the way over 45 minutes to get the meat and 45 minutes back, they asked if I could take them, which was 10 minutes there and 10 minutes back.
Yeah, if that. I mean,
Yeah.
and none of the hookup time or anything
So
else.
they have to provide, the teachers needed provision for them
Yeah.
to still be there with the weather and with transportation. So,
One of the little boys, and we're getting a little bit of field here, but one of the little boys, the youngest name was
Nathan.
Nathan. He took a great interest in being Delaine's guide. So
Yes.
as soon as Delaine woke up, Nathan started telling Delaine about the farm and everything like that. And one of Nathan's jobs, oh, this is classic. Okay, one of Nathan's jobs was to go get the eggs. Okay,
Yeah.
and most of the time the kids were barefoot. It was September. The kids were barefoot most of the time, even when they're milking the cows and everything. And you think, oh, that's a little bit gross, but yeah, but you know what?
That's farm life.
It's easier to clean off your feet than boots.
Yeah.
So Nathan would go out and into the chicken coop, and how many chickens would you say were in that
Oh,
coop?
Hundreds.
hundreds, and he's walking around there getting the eggs and everything, and he's got all the eggs. He brings them back in the house, and he climbs up on the countertop and walks down the countertop.
The kitchen countertop next to the stove where there's food,
Oh, our
plates.
breakfast was cooking.
Yeah. And I stopped and I'm like, oh, this is, I don't know if I can do this.
Delaine's a little bit of a germaphobe, and
Yeah,
she's a
just a little
little bit
bit.
OCD, and she's going, "Oh man, I don't know."
I just
But
turned my head.
hey, we learned so much about farm culture there at that moment, so it was beautiful. Got another
Yeah.
question, one more. I
Yeah.
know we've got lots more there, but maybe just one more.
Okay. Okay, yes. You said something about the Amish speaking Pennsylvania Dutch. What language is that?
Oh wow, wow. Well, they're actually the Amish speak three languages, okay,
Mm-hmm.
and they're used in different parts of their lives. Um, and Pennsylvania Dutch is just a dialect, kind of an eclectic part of um, a language that is unique to the Amish community. It's a little Dutch, it's a little German, it's a little English, all smattered together there.
Okay, well, my story is about when we got there. I just wasn't really sure how we were going to fit in with everything that was there. We were going to stay in their home. They were not accustomed to us um, at all. They did not know us at all. And but when we got there, we were made to feel very, very welcome and just open arms. The kids were wonderful. Like I said, there were 6 of them at home, 2 girls and 5 boys. And so I just began to talk to Rachel, and I said, just give me a job, whatever you want me to do, and I'll be, I cook, I clean, I do laundry, I do canning. We were right in the middle, right in the center of canning season. I said, I can help with canning, I can help in the garden, I can go out and pick vegetables, whatever you want me to do. She said, well, this Thursday is always my laundry day. And she said, we always try to get all of our laundry done and have it ready for them to have their outfits for Sunday church. That was the focus of the week. And so I said, sure, I'll be glad to. And so I walked out into this huge room that was built specially for like a summer kitchen. So they would do all their canning out there. They also did all of their church services when they had their church service there at their home. That's where they set up their tables and all the people would come in there. And then it was also the laundry room. And in the wintertime, they would hang up all these clotheslines that went back and forth and they would hang up all of their clothes. Well, I look over and there literally is a pile of clothes that is 5 feet tall, almost as tall as I am. Now, you think about 8 people, a week's worth of laundry. And of course, they're changing every day because they live on a farm and they get dirty easily. And so, okay, I'll do what I can. And so I start sorting. And Roseanne, one of the girls, came
Now
out and
that
she says,
there's a little bit of a misnomer there. Anyway, you talk about sorting. There's only three colors, okay?
this is true. Dark, dark, and darker.
Yeah, that's right.
And so she came out and she said, now, have you ever run a wringer washer? And I said, well, I've never run one, but I've seen them run. And my mom used to talk about, doing her laundry back years ago, my diapers when I was a baby. And so I said, but I'm willing to learn. And so it was the old hand crank washer, and then it was the hand crank wringer. So you had to run it through, and then you had to take all the clothes, let the water out, and then you had to rinse them. Or no, you put them in another place to rinse them, and then do a hand crank, and then you ran them through the wringer.
And I wish you could try to get a middle picture of this while she's describing it, because you've got 3 stations
Hmm.
established and 1 Delaine.
Actually, 4
4 stations.
with the close.
Okay.
And you couldn't overfill, because if you overfilled, then you couldn't crank it. So you could only put like 2 or 3 dresses or 1 or 2 pairs of pants,
And
men's pants
the
at a
crank
time.
is what agitates them, if you
Right,
will, to get all the
right,
dirt out. Yeah.
right. So it was a long process. And then you'd get your basket filled up, and you would take it outside and you would hang it on the clothesline. Well, that was a process in itself, to take it out, hang it all up. So so I came back in, and obviously I was not working up to potential. And so Roseanne came out and she said, "Hey, we have an electric wringer that you can use." So I said, "Oh, good. I can use an electric wringer." My arm was getting sore, and so I thought, "Yeah, I'll just load that thing up and wring them out, and I'll take them out. This will go a lot faster." Well, you can't put any more than 2 pairs of pants in this electric wringer. It's very small, and well, I overloaded it. I turned it on. The thing took off and it walked clear across the floor. I couldn't get it stopped. I couldn't get it unplugged. The girls all came out from the kitchen and they were all looking at me like, "Uh-oh." And I thought I had broken it. So that meant I had to finish. We couldn't get it to work after that. So I had to finish all the ringing. Okay, we had breakfast in the morning around 5:30 after you all came back from the barn. So about 5:30 we fixed breakfast, then we cleaned up the mess, and then um, Rachel would take a break about that time. Well, I got started on the laundry, and I worked from about
7,
o'clock
yeah, 6:30 right in there.
till about 5 o'clock that evening doing laundry. And just as I had to go back and take it all down because you couldn't leave it up all night. So after it had hung all day, then you had to go back and pick it all up. I was so tired that night. I fell into bed. I just was so tired.
I think that's one of the things that, excuse me, I apologize earlier for the coughing episode there. But I think that was one of the things we learned is the rhythms
Yeah.
of the farm and the
Yeah.
rhythms of work.
Yeah.
And literally from 4 till the time when the sun went down at about 8:30, and we would go into our bedroom and we would be asleep by 9 because that alarm came up early the next morning.
But there was no going and sitting down on the sofa and watching TV. Then
Nope.
we had to fix dinner
Yeah.
and fix dinner for everybody and clean up the mess. And then afterwards, I loved the part where there was always a devotional. Every single meal, Melvin always led us in a devotional. Now, sometimes he would read it in German or Pennsylvania Dutch, but most of the time he read it in English. And every single meal, breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
It was interesting. Melvin did this again to accommodate us. He was so loving towards us
Mm-hmm.
and so gentle, and we learned so much of his love for us. But he had procured an NIV, a New International Version Bible, that he would read the devotional from, and then he would also read it in the High German, the High German, actually the Lutheran Bible. And he'd read that devotional from there. So it meant so much to us.
Mm-hmm.
That was
It sure
beautiful.
did. It really did. Another one of my episodes there was we had told them they were doing a silage day while we were there. And that meant they brought in several men in the Amish community to come in and eat with us, do all the silage, and then we would fix a big dinner. Well, you had called me beforehand and said, "Hey, bring up some of our roast from our freezer and some of our frozen corn and things like that." And so I just went ahead and planned the meal. And I thought we'd have roast and mashed potatoes and green beans and corn, frozen corn,
Rolls.
and rolls, and a couple of pies. And so I got busy that morning and I started cooking. And I basically cooked all morning. And So when the guys came in and they sat
Can I
down,
can I just give them a snapshot,
mm,
because this is what we're over there doing was very, very hard work. There was a team of 8 horses that would pull the
mm,
silage machine, okay? And it was a very loud, noisy machine that would cut the corn, grind it up, and then shoot it over into a wagon that was there waiting. And then we would the wagon horses were 2 horses that were pulling the wagon. So it would get about 3/4 of the way full. We would drive the wagon over to another place where we'd then unload the silage and come back. And there were horses and wagons going the whole time. So as soon as we got out of the way, another one came, and our horses had to be right, their ears were right at the side of that machine that was making all of that noise, and never flinch.
mm,
It was one of the
mm.
most amazing things. Is I'm getting to drive these horses, and I think, oh, they're going to bolt at any moment, but they knew exactly where to position themselves, and we are hoping to get this whole field, about a 40-acre field, done before the lunch break. And I think we were going to eat a late lunch, though, probably what, 2ish.
Yeah, it was
Yeah,
around 2 o'clock.
yeah.
Yeah. Um, so Rachel wasn't, it was kind of known in the Amish community that Rachel wasn't much of a cook. And
And she embraced that.
she embraced it. She wasn't, but she had 8 children,
Yes.
and so she just didn't take the time to fix big meals. And we
And
think of Amish as fixing these huge harvest meals every meal, and maybe some of them do, but Rachel didn't.
Rachel's attentiveness really was to the kids, and she
Very much.
she spent a lot of time just in nurturing and
Teaching.
teaching, and that's why several of her girls became teachers as well. So,
Yeah.
she, whenever we think about that, there's strengths and weaknesses in all of us.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
but go ahead, because this is great.
And Rachel had me drive over and pick up with her that morning, pick up her mother and bring her back so she could help me with, because Rachel had some chores she had to do, and we brought her mother back with us, and so she helped me fix, some of the dinner. Would you say there was probably 15 to 20 men
Yeah,
that were
there were
working?
there were 18 guys, all of us together, that
Okay.
sat at the table.
And this table was massive.
Yes.
You could seat a good 20 men
And
at
this
it.
is the boys are let out of school to go to
Mhm.
do the silage work. So this was from 12, 13 years old, all the way up to 60 and 70-year-old men.
Right.
The guy that was driving one of the wagons was 70, 75 years old.
So I think I made, 2 5-pound bags of mashed
At
potatoes.
least, yeah.
Yeah, 2 roasts. We had lots of corn. I mean, I still was worried that we weren't going to have enough food. But I set this food down, and these guys' eyes, they got really big, and they looked over at me like, "Wow." And they never said a word. Never. They just started eating.
Well,
And then we passed the pies around, and they all took a piece of pie. And one of them told you later, um, you can have your wife come back
that's
anytime
yeah,
during
that's
silage.
she can come back next year. We got our invitation right there because of
but
Delaine's dinner.
but I'm not telling these stories because I'm trying to pat myself on the back. I'm telling these because these were experiences that were so rich to us because we went up there. I don't know what they expected or what they thought, but we wanted to serve them.
Mm.
We wanted to make life a little bit easier for them, immerse ourselves in their lifestyle. I wore dresses every day. I wore skirts and tops. I wore a head covering. I never took my head covering off during the time, from the time I got up in the morning to the time I went to bed at night. When we went to church with them, I dressed appropriately for church. And they really, really, really appreciated that I wasn't trying to stand out.
Would you say that as you take home something that impacted you spiritually, would it be
Mhm.
that humility of serving one
Yeah.
another? And,
Yes.
Christ made it so clear as if you want to be number one, take the last seat in the house,
Yeah.
bake the pies, fix the meal. Do not put yourself in the forefront, but become a servant of all.
Mhm.
And I watched you serve, and with Nathaniel, him tagging around was an extra chore for you. But you know what? That kid just absolutely fell in love with you.
Well, he
Um,
fell in love with you too,
eh,
because we paid a lot of attention to him. He took me out to the garden. Now, he was only 6 years old, and he didn't have 4 top teeth. He had lost all 4 top teeth, and he didn't and 2 on the bottom were gone, and he spoke Pennsylvania Dutch part of the time, and I couldn't understand a word he said, but he would take me out to the garden and teach me how to pick tomatoes. It was the cutest thing. We just enjoyed them so much.
and he told you, shh,
Yeah,
we don't
tiptoe,
tiptoe
tiptoe.
when you go out there. So it was really special. If I were to go back and I was trying to capture the essence of that time for me, there's a verse that just stuck out to me so powerfully. And it comes from it's Matthew, but it's an abridged version, if you will. Because sometimes, well, let me relate it back to Rimspringer, okay? Because a Rumspringa, because most people say, well, once they get a taste for our culture,
Mm.
they'll never go back to the Amish way. The fact is, almost 90% of the kids that go on Rumspringa come back and make a commitment to becoming Amish. I never imagined that. There was something else about that same aspect was this. Melvin said to me over and over, how do you live like you do? How do you live? And I'm thinking just the opposite. How do you live like you do? You're working
Yeah,
all.
because I can tell you, I missed my washer and dryer.
How do you live like you do? And he said, everything is always fast paced and there's something always happening and
Chaos.
chaos.
Mhm.
And he said, by the time I left, I had recognized what I would refer to, what the scripture refers to in this passage, as a rhythm of grace.
Mm.
Um, Grace is a really good way of understanding grace is that it's unmerited favor, um, and just just instituting in our lives a place of grace where there's a rhythm of quietness.
Mhm.
And here's what the verse says: walk with me, work with me, watch how I do it. Learn the unforced rhythm of grace.
Mm.
I won't lay anything heavy or ill fitting on you. Keep company with me, and you'll learn to live freely and
Mm.
lightly.
Mm.
And what I learned in that time, I'm I'm a bit of an agendized person. I have trouble relaxing. I have a difficult time. You enjoy watching a movie, and you know that I can't hardly even sit through a movie because
Mhm.
I've got to have my hands going or something else going or be about more things or filling out more paperwork and this, that, and the other. And I'm learning and relearning because when I visited this last week and then this week, I've had to recalibrate and say, Lord, teach me a rhythm, an unforced rhythm of grace, of
Mm.
unmerited favor that I don't, this is for me, I don't have to earn. It's unmerited. I don't have to, nothing I'm getting nothing I'm doing deserves the grace. It's the unmerited rhythm
Mhm.
of grace. And man, that has just hit me so hard because I tend to want to earn my
Mhm.
keep, so to
Mhm.
speak, or
Mhm.
have a paycheck at the end of it. And being retired and unemployed, that doesn't mean a paycheck at the end of that time. So this is such. I'm going to read that verse again because it means so much to me. Walk with me. This is what Jesus is saying to his disciples, but His words are coming right into your car in your home right now. Walk with me and work with me. Watch how I do it. Learn the unforced rhythms of
Mm-hmm.
grace. I
Mm-hmm.
won't lay anything heavy or ill fitting on you. Keep company with me, and you'll learn to live freely and lightly. It's from Matthew from the Message, and I thank you so much for sharing that with me and us getting to share that time
Mm-hmm.
in that Amish
It was a
community.
great time. It really was. It was a heartwarming, and it was a great way to start the sabbatical because we put our cell phones away. We didn't take them out at all. I've thought about that so many times. How many pictures I would have loved to have had because it was just such a beautiful time. We were right there in the midst of it, but we didn't want to do anything
No,
to break their trust in us. But it was a time to get off the grid,
yeah,
off the
couple of
crazy
things.
craziness.
Obviously, you and I could talk about this forever,
Oh
okay?
yeah,
Because
there's a
there's so
lot
many
more.
things. Because we found out how important events are. And um, the first event we were invited to was a funeral.
Hmm.
And they made a point of inviting us to that funeral
And we hadn't been there for a couple years,
a year.
3 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was one of the grandparents, and they wanted us at that funeral.
Hmm.
Now, we weren't invited to the wedding because weddings are
Are different.
a whole different
Yeah.
event, and it involves the whole Amish community. One of their daughters was married to a young man from a different community, all the way over in Ohio, and they courted on that distance
Actually,
relationship.
that
So,
was their son, their oldest
okay,
son.
I'm sorry.
Hmm.
You're right. You're right.
Hmm.
She's the detail person. I'm the big picture. But we saw that as well.
And that's a big deal. They serve 3 meals on the wedding day,
And then
each
there's
meal getting bigger.
another part that was pretty distressing to us as well, and that was that within the Amish community, because there are only a 500,000 people, and they are marrying one another, and the lineages are crossing. There are some birth defects that are common among the Amish, and in our area, um, they bring those kids that are more severely
Hmm.
affected by that down to Riley Hospital, and Riley is which is the Children's Hospital in Indianapolis. And Riley is very astute on dealing with those kids and ministering to them. And so, as soon as one of the children in that family had a child that had a birth defect, they were down at Riley, and they
Hmm.
let us know right away. We're down at Riley now, and they wanted us to know. Can I tell
Oh,
you that?
there's one more thing I want to capture for our audience to hear is that very first night we got there. I was really nervous. I was really really nervous because I didn't know how we were going to fit in. I didn't know how this was all going to go. And we laid down in bed that night after we'd had dinner, and it was under that quilt that you were talking about in this little room back off by ourselves.
Mm,
And it was warm. It was late August, early September, I think.
early September,
Yeah.
yeah.
And the windows needed to be open. And as we laid down, and I'm trying to unwind and think about, I gotta be up by 4 o'clock tomorrow morning to help with the to help with the breakfast, and then it's laundry day, and it was my first day. You had been there before I went later, and all of a sudden I heard this. It was really dark because
Pitch
there's
dark.
no there's
No
no
electric
street
lights.
lights, there's no electric lights, there wasn't anything. And all of a sudden I hear this clip, clop, clip, clop. And on the road in front of their house was this horse and buggy going down the street, and the horse clip clopping along. And I thought, it was just God's confirmation. Everything's going to be okay. Just,
Felt like home.
it did. It was just so calming and so um, cozy.
You talk about a community, and we talked about this story mosaics community, and we'll wrap it here. But the Story Mosaics community is starting to bind with one another. We would encourage you to continue. Write us so that we can share a little bit more.
Yeah.
Ask us questions so we
We'd
can
love
share.
to hear from you.
We'd love to hear your insights as well. And I know we have a strong listenership up in Napanee and Goshen area, and which is kind of a center of the Amish community. But I mentioned to you the kids down at Riley, and then last week I mentioned to you the man that was hurt so severely and was flown by Lifeline to Fort Wayne Hospital there. We went to church that Sunday, and they stood before the congregation and they said, we have the first shares of how much we must pay the hospital. Our district share is $50,000.
They collected it that morning.
They collected it that morning, and it was all there. Not another word was said.
We felt so. I remember just walking away from there thinking how privileged we were to have witnessed that.
Yes.
Because first of all, it was highly irregular for an Englishman to be invited to their church service. It's very private, and so for us to get to see that in itself, and then get to witness how they served each other in the community was just, it was mind blowing.
That was the healthcare system right there.
It's their healthcare system.
That was their healthcare system.
And I know that there were more installations like that down the road because his injuries were so severe.
And the little baby down at Riley was there for many months being cared for. So there's so many things we can learn in this unforced rhythm of grace. Hey, thanks for joining us on Story Mosaics today. It's been a privilege to have you here. And again, thank you for writing us, caring for one another. If maybe you've gone back and listened to a prior episode, don't be afraid to comment about that. I love being able to pass those along to other people and let them get to hear that. Desi appreciated Hannah's comments so much, and we have people that we absolutely love. You'll be hearing from people from around the world of their stories as well. And so we're looking forward to what's the future for Story Mosaics. Thanks again for joining us today.